Welcome everybody back here at Veil of Sound at the Devil's Mouth. You may be wondering why there was no December edition, and that's because of me having been ill basically for a month or so. More or less recovering, but we said, okay, we have to get this thing going. So, okay, it's the third Friday of January, and of course you get playlists by both of us. So Jose prepared his, and I prepared mine. This time we are looking at music from, let's say, a geographical standpoint. Isn't that right? Correct? And
Yeah,
Jose, what do you think?
yeah. I think that was the starting point for it. As I said in the previous conversation that we had, so about a month and a half ago. I'm glad you're feeling better, by the way.
Thank you.
I liked how when you first invited me to do this, how you gave examples that were really crazy specific, and because I had been doing a bit more general things, I wanted to be a little bit more specific. So this time I started in Southern Europe, and because it is still a bit of an underrated, I wouldn't even call it a scene, but I guess general movement of black metal in the 90s. Of course, the northern, especially Scandinavian, especially Norwegian bands were extremely important. But down south, where there's not so much snow and where the weather is a bit nicer, we were doing very dark music as well.
Yeah.
And I think it had some points of contact. I mainly looked at Portugal, Spain, Italy, and Greece. And I think there were extremely important bands with their own characteristics at the time. And so the playlist is based on that. Southern European black metal, generally of the 90s.
Which is a very interesting thing. And there is one thing that I like about a lot of Southern European black metal. You don't have to worry about the brown assholes from the fascist side, because many black metal bands from down there, especially from Greece, have a very different political opinion. Some of them even very left-wing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have any idea why that is?
I don't, to be honest. I'm glad it is like that. I really have no clear explanation. Although there also are in these scenes the odd assholes. But yeah, generally speaking, it's much cleaner scene, and I'm very happy about that.
Yeah. I also remember that, reading up on this a little bit for our collaboration, there seemed to have been a lot of left-wing Greece black metal bands who literally have had minimum verbal altercations or maximum real fights with the other side of the political spectrum. And I also don't have an explanation for that, apart from one, which is a little strange, especially for Italy. We'll come to that case maybe a little later, but there has never been a real strong fascist regime in Greece. Right. When you look at Spain and Italy, and if I remember correctly, also and Portugal, we have had fascist governments in there as well. So maybe that is one of the reasons why Greece has not had so much right-wing black metal as the other scenes, and especially as well, unfortunately, Germany, right? And and I'm also glad that you picked that.
There is no hankering for the old times of Franco or Salazar or Mussolini.
Yeah, exactly. It will be interesting to see how it develops in Italy nowadays, because having a, well, let's say minimalist neo-fascist government now under the new prime minister in Italy, it will be interesting to see if the rats come out of the holes again.
Yeah.
But in Spain, I also looked at Spain a little bit, because Spain was like the fascist regime of Franco is nearly like 45 years ago. So well, yes, there is some tendency towards it, but it's much less than in other parts of Europe.
To be honest, I have very little idea of the political affiliations of most of these bands that I picked. As I mentioned, these are most bands from the early 90s of the scene. When we were younger, we weren't so much aware of things. And generally speaking, there was also less of a concern about those things. So I hope there's nothing shady in my playlist.
Well, I looked up a few of the bands that I didn't know from your list. And so I can say that those that I looked up don't have any shady affiliations.
Those that I know and people that I know in these bands and everything, there's nothing here, or else I wouldn't put it there, of course. But there's also bands here that I have no idea who they are, especially the Spanish bands that are, strangely or not, I don't know, the least internationally known in this scene. Greece has its own little thing. These Italian bands that I had on the playlist, they are very important in the underground. Some of the Portuguese bands, even, I've very fortunately seen them praised, but the Spanish black metal of the 90s remains sort of a very undiscovered thing outside Spain.
It's a very niche and very, very underground thing. So if any one of you knows other Spanish black metal bands that we should have included, hit us up.
That's another thing that I would like to mention. I'm sure there will be some examples that people get, because this sort of thing is hard to find on Spotify.
It is hard to find, and it's even harder to find on Spotify.
There are at least 5 or 6 bands that I really, when I started thinking of the playlist, then there wasn't anything on Spotify by them, and I was so disappointed. But I know the list is, well, all lists are incomplete by definition.
Yeah, all lists must come to an end, right? And exactly. I like
this one even more so, but it's because of that. I'm sorry. And there are some things here that are re-recordings or reissues or just flat out songs that are not from the 90s. That's also due to Spotify. Sorry.
Which is also fine. I loved the fact that you included some, or at least 2 of my favorite Southern European black metal bands. You included Rotting Christ and Necromantia, both from Greece. Necromantia, maybe even less known than Rotting Christ, who are, I think, one of the biggest names on there, next to Moonspell.
Alongside Moonspell, they're the 2 big ones of this.
Yes.
But Necromantia, to me, equally as important as they are, but less recognized. So
definitely,
I wanted to give them all their dues.
Also, they had a very, very nice reissue on their first demos like a year ago on the label run by Behemoth's Nergal. Wherever you want to put that politically, that's up to you. But the reissue itself is really, really nice. So if you look for that, just hit us up. We can get you the link. But I'm afraid it's already sold out. Those editions are completely made from scratch. And they're only like
cult thing.
300 or so, I think.
While on the subject of promotion, if you want to go on the Devil's Mouth, there is a very nice episode from a few months ago with Mr. Magus from Necromantia, and that was one of my favorite episodes. He is such a wonderful character, such good musical taste. There was a lot of talk about Necromantia, so you might want
and I also like the way that I think that some of those bands, for example, Moonspell, they took some turns within their discography. But the root is black metal, and that is something that a lot of people don't know.
The amount of Moonspell fans that don't know Morbid Gods, the band that they were before Moonspell, is especially outside Portugal. Here, at least from a certain age, we all know them. But, they're very unknown internationally, and beginnings of black metal in Europe for sure. A lot of merit for that.
And also beginnings of scenes. You spoke about the question whether we can talk about a scene. Well, of course, geographically we cannot. The difference between Portugal and Greece is just too big. We cannot talk about one scene. We can talk about several scenes, and each country has, even up today, I think, only smaller black metal scenes.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know about Portugal, but I looked it up a little bit for Spain and Greece, and these black metal scenes are still pretty small compared to
Portugal
Northern
is
Europe.
actually with an influx of a lot of quality black metal, but it's
Mhm.
still a small pocket. It's kind of like in Iceland. It's like you have 10, 12 people who have between them like 30 bands.
Yeah.
Even if it looks like a big scene, it's not. It's small pockets of people who are very
Mm.
creative and all have several projects and collaborate with each
Yeah, and then there is always question whether you need a new name for every project, right?
other. Exactly. Yeah. We have a
Um,
perfectly good example of a pioneer of that. You mentioned Rotting Christ and Necromantia. I also had to add Thou Art Lord, which was the joining of those two bands under the Thou Art Lord project. So from
yeah.
very early on, those associations started to be made in the black metal.
Would you say that black metal has grown over the last 20, 30, 40 years in Portugal and Spain? Or would you say it's still a niche thing?
It's both, yes. It still is, and it always be a niche thing. No matter how big a black metal band gets, it will be still a niche thing in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
By definition, you'll never hear black metal on the radio, for example, or on TV
Well,
or whatever.
lucky us, right?
Right?
Imagine they took it from us.
Let us have the only things that we still have left. On the other hand, yes, of course, it's grown. Yeah, Portugal right now has an amazing scene. I'm not so sure about Spain. I'm not so much of a connoisseur, but yeah, I mean, just the amount of bands that have come out of there in the last few years and the importance of them, Titan Blood, stuff like that. Yeah, it's grown, it's developed like pretty much everywhere else, I guess.
Yeah. What I noticed when I looked up Italy, and that was also a starting point for my upcoming Spotify list. I looked it up and I saw that there is a lot of good doom-based metal. And I looked it up a little bit, and I saw that, of course, we all know that Spain has a pretty good doom metal scene. Portugal, I found a few good examples, of course. And then it was interesting, as popular as black metal seems to be in Greece, less popular seems to be doom metal. So it also seems as if each country has like its own little niche.
Yeah.
When we talk about Italy, of course, we talk about bands like UFO Mammoth, we talk about Void of Sleep. I did not include others for me because they touch too much into the post-metal scene.
Yeah.
But in
Even
Spain,
if you
for example,
veer more into the traditional metal like Doomsword and stuff like that, who are also connected to Doom, yeah, it's a very fertile place for Doom.
So you see, today you get two playlists that are connected geographically, in parts and sound. But we will be having a look at other scenes as well. We could talk about the Chinese and South Korean post-rock scene. We could talk about Afrobeat in Africa.
We probably will in the future, yes.
We maybe will. I have discovered a few Brazilian bands lately, which I really love.
Oh, yeah.
Something that we will probably not do, and we're already sorry for that, or at least I am. We will not be giving you playlists on Norwegian black metal or on black metal from Holland and so on, because those are very well established artists, those are very well established scenes. And please remember, when we set out to do this, we wanted to give you stuff that you might not have heard of.
Yeah.
So we are looking forward to your suggestions. Maybe Mexican hip hop. That would be difficult for me, or whatever,
whatever. Throw it at us and we'll figure it out. Yeah.
We'll find something.
Looking forward to the challenge.
Definitely. Challenges for us. That would also be nice. So, Jose, once again, thanks for doing this. And I'm already excited for what you come up with for February.
Me too. Likewise.